What brought you to the beautiful Andalusia?
The easy answer is, if you look out the window, there it is. I normally say to people that the beautiful yellow light is the thing that brought me here. In reality, the yellow light is the thing that keeps me here. What brought me here was my wife and I were traveling 45 years ago in Europe, and it was the coldest winter on record, and we were in the south of France, and someone that we met said, if you want a warm place, go to southern Spain, go to Fuengirola. They have a beach bar there, and the guy that owns it has a lot of good used books and plays a good game of chess. So we came, it was cheap, and it was warm. And that's the main reason that we came here originally. But the reason I'm here now, despite all the tourists and everything else that's in Spain, is because of this light.
Okay. When did you discover that you could make a living out of painting?
I think I discovered it out of necessity more than anything else. After I gave up on painting completely, after I left, I was just teaching in university, and I left and I went to study philosophy in India. I had another business, and I thought I would never go back to painting. I came back to Spain after we were thrown out of India because of visa problems, having to go back and forth and back and forth. And finally, we're in Spain. I have a newborn baby, and I have no money. And I was extremely fortunate, as I have been in my whole life, meeting the right people at the right time or having the right things happen. And an artist moved in an apartment down below us. I walked into his studio and I saw a painting and I went, wow. And it was a connection, and the connection was very simple. I had been painting abstract art when I left as an artist. I had been studying philosophy, and I suddenly had a subject that I wanted to talk about. And here I see a painter that was doing what I thought would work, and that is, it was realistic, it was surrealistic, it wasn't Dali surrealistic, it was something else. And I thought, that really fits. So that, no money, I said to Jose, can you teach me how to do that? And he said, sure, it's very simple. And you do this and you do this. And every time I had a question, I went downstairs, got another answer. And in 6 months, I was painting realistic painting, surrealistic painting, that fit the kind of subject that I wanted to talk about.
You are an admirer of Willem de Koning, and you started as an abstract painter. How did this turn into magic realism?
Okay, you have to imagine when I was in university in the States, and it was in the 60s, and figurative art was completely out. I mean, no one was interested, everything was abstract, and you had pop art, and you had the minimalist art, and obviously the abstract paintings of de Kooning, Pollock, Gorky, Rothko, and this was the world that, as an art student, I lived in. Before that, I had learned to render. That means I could take something and put it in front of me and make it look real. And I actually helped pay my way through university by illustrating a book of anthropology, which was doing very, very realistic skulls and bones and things like that as part of the book. So that was one side of my life. The other side was, in the classroom, I enormously admired abstract painting because I didn't quite understand it. I wanted to see how it came together to make something that was really special for me to look at. And the person that I admired the most was de Kooning. Maybe because in the women's series, there was something of the physical world in it to start off. But ultimately I thought, that's what I want to be, that's where I want to go, and I want to understand fully what composition is without subject matter. And I think I did that eventually, and that's the way I painted until, and maybe I need to tell this story, I hope it's not too long. I was living in an apartment in Kansas in the winter, and it was extremely cold, and this wild cat, the male cat, huge, was at the window freezing to death. And so I let him in, knew he was completely wild, he wouldn't get close to me, but he stayed for the winter. And I would work at night, and in my studio space in my apartment, the way I was working at the time was all black and white, pieces of white paper, and I would put them on the floor and on the walls, and I would draw, turn them upside down, draw again, put them on the wall, put more down, and this was the whole process of working. I came into the studio in an afternoon, and there was the cat sleeping on one of my drawings. And just as a kind of I don't know, for fun, I went and took the charcoal and went around his body and made the outline of the sleeping cat. And I made that drawing with the cat still in it as part of a group of drawings that I showed to my teachers. In the end, I liked that drawing the best. And somehow that connection between de Kooning's paintings of woman number one through the series and the cat, and I did a series of cats in this very abstract format, and that was the thing that slowly pulled me back towards a more realistic subject matter.
Okay. How do you start an idea for a painting?
As I said earlier, the reason that I went back to painting was because I had spent several years studying philosophy, metaphysics, more esoteric thought. And this was the world that I lived in and the world I wanted to talk about. So when I went back to painting, for two reasons. One, to try to make a living, and two, to talk about those subjects. So I would say in the beginning, the paintings were thoughts first and visual ideas second. Of course, over the years, they flip back and forth. There are times when I make my drawings on vellum because it's very resilient. I can flip from one side to the other if I want to. And I can walk into my studio and here are 10 drawings that are lying around. You can see through them. So what happens is I see a drawing on top, I see a drawing underneath, I see even a third layer underneath that, and all of a sudden the combination of those three things sparks an idea. So that would be a kind of a random insertion into my thought process. And I would say, hey, that's a really good visual idea, and then I would work with that and make it into a painting. So basically two things. One, philosophical, and try to say, how can I visually translate that philosophical idea? And then the other one, I have a visual thing and I go, how can I relate that to a philosophical or a metaphysical or esoteric thought that I want to talk about? So, both sides.
Okay. What's the best and worst thing about your profession as an artist?
The best thing is really easy, and that is, I'm 74 years old. I get up every morning excited about something that to me is new and unknown. I can do anything at this point. I can change my style. I can come up with an idea that I can't possibly paint because it's too complex for me, but it's a challenge to try. So that's the best part. It's a never-ending game. It's a game mostly with myself, but it's still a game that's exciting enough that you want to do it every day. The downside is the fact that it's a business, and you have to deal with people in the world that are not particularly interested in art. Amazingly enough, you'd say if somebody owns a gallery, they must be lovers of art. Not necessarily. They can know nothing about art. They only love how much money can be made from art, and they make life a living hell. And this is the ongoing process. You have to get paid, you have to deal with clients, you have to deal with all the people that surround the actual process of making the art. That's the downside.
Okay. If you had to start over, would you choose a different path in your career?
I often say, especially now that I am older, is that I wished I'd stuck with abstract expressionism. Because that way I can get up every morning and by noon I will have finished a large painting. As it is now, the direction that I've chosen is a painting of reasonable size, will take me 3 weeks to a month, sitting in this chair in a rather bad position, which means I've been doing this 52 years. If you want to count up the hours, the reason that my back is such a problem is because of the way I paint, which normally with the detail is leg up, elbow, painting like this. Try that for 8 hours and see how it works. So if I had it to do over again, I think I would have had at least half of my career as an abstract expressionist.
Can you tell us something about your recent painting, Dragonfly Diva? Is the diva from Buddhism or the Greek mythology? Also, we see often the dragonfly in your paintings. What's the symbolic meaning of it?
One of the main reasons why I was interested in metaphysics is that if you look at individual religions, they all have certain things in common, and yet they have a divergence at a certain point. And my idea was simply that if you look at all the different spiritual pathways for humankind, and you follow them back to the source, there is a commonality. And within that commonality, there are truths that are not lost by what religion has become. So one of those things that was fascinating to me was that in individual religions from very different parts of the world, let's say the Mayans, the Hindus, the Buddhists, Jains, any combination, and I've tried to read them all at one point, is that as an example, a deva. And this is a being, a higher being, a deity, that had the responsibility of helping manifest the physical world. So if everything is energy, and everything is malleable in this energy, then there were certain beings that were given the responsibility of creating out of that essence of energy individual material things. And that can be anything from a rock to a fish to a wave to anything else. So these devas, that was their job. They were creators. And so why am I fascinated by that? What does a painter do? Creates. So it is a natural transition to go to something that to me is interesting. How did this world manifest itself? The beauty that is here, the process of how it works, how did it come about? So I am painting the idea of the deva as a creative entity that makes our world physically solid. The dragonfly is one of those creatures, again, through numerous religions, various aspects of the occult and shamanism and so on. There are certain things in the physical world that have a certain flexibility. The raven, the cat, the dragonfly. These are things that are able to move between the physical spaces. So we see them in our world, and yet they have the unique ability to go to, in the occult, they call it shifting to the right or shifting to the left. You go out of the physical plane that we live in and go to the more subtle plane to the right or to the left. And these creatures are able to make that move and to go back and forth all the time. And so, again, the dragonfly, and for that matter the cat, are fascinating for the reason that they have that ability.
Besides paintings and drawings, you also make sculptures, and in the past stone lithographs, which make you a unique artist. Which of those techniques do you like the most?
I mentioned earlier about feeling extremely lucky, and the fact that I have known people in my life that were uniquely creative is probably the biggest gift that I've been given. And in doing stone lithography, in doing sculptures, I ran into people, I say by accident, but I don't believe there is such a thing. I believe that you are given opportunities and you're given gifts. And with Peter and Helmut working to do the stone lithographs, that was a special gift. Working with Piero to do the sculptures, a wonderful special gift. And the reason why is, this is my studio. If I were just a painter, I would be in this room day after day, month after month, my whole life, until I went crazy. But being able to do sculpture and the stone lithographs, that means I had to not only get out of this room. I had to leave Spain. I had to go to Switzerland, to Zurich to do the stone lithographs because the stones are so heavy you can't bring them here. You have to go to the stones. When I wanted to do sculpture, at 50, I said, if I'm ever going to make sculpture, I have to do it now. On my 50th birthday, I went to Italy, walked into a foundry and said, teach me. And the person that was there to teach me, not speaking a word of English, and I didn't speak any Italian, was Piero. And Piero Bertelli and I have been working together now 25 years. We have our own language, which is Italio-Espanol, so half and half, more or less. And it's just a wonderful gift that these people sort of share the burden of creativity. That, as Helmut would say to me over and over again, I say, Helmut, I don't know what to do now. Should it be a little more this way, a little more that way? And Helmut would say, I'm sorry, I'm just a printer. I'm going to go get a beer. Let me know when you've decided. But he was there, and in a way, it helped make those decisions. And it was a collaborative effort. And when people say, artists should be, they are the sole creators. That's really nonsense. Everything makes the artist do something. And when you're working with people like Helmut and Peter, who had been doing the business as long as I had, 50 years-ish, they knew things about color that I didn't know, and it was incredibly helpful. So the simple answer is, all three things I like equally in proportion, because it helps me to move my life around and be even more creative than I would be if I was sitting just here.
To me, you are one of the best stone lithographers that I know, and I can say it because out of my own profession. It is said that all the good stone print studios has to close down because they are extinct. Don't you miss to do stone lithography?
Yes, it's just that simple. I think at a certain age you realize that things eventually close to you, and to try to get them back, for me at least, is a mistake. I accept the fact that that whole part of my life is finished, and I have moved on doing more sculpture and other things, and so it's just a wonderful memory. And every time I see one of my stone lithographs, especially when I'm doing an opening and somebody says to me, could you explain that stone lithograph to me? It's normally not the subject matter that I explain, it's the process that happened during that stone lithograph. It's the quirky little quartz spur that was in the stone that made me work around it because it wouldn't print. And nobody knows that except for me and two other people, and they're both not here anymore. So it's a kind of I don't know, it's a gift to be able to go back and remember those things.
Your work has been in print for a long time. How has reproducing your art changed over the years?
There are certain advantages of living a long time, and there are other disadvantages. So far, one of them for me has been when going to an opening or a book signing, somebody comes up with a poster that was printed in 1986 that the person said, this is my favorite thing in the whole world and I love it, could you sign it? And I look at the poster and all the red is completely gone, burned out by daylight. Yellow is almost gone, so basically what you have is a blue kind of ghost of the original image. The person that is holding it proudly doesn't really see that, but I just want to say to them, please let me replace that with something that's been printed today. And this is to me one of the things. I talked about stone lithography. It's a process that was from the previous century, and it's gone, and it's sad, but it has gone. But something else is interesting that has taken its place, and that is from doing the original 4-color offset printing of posters in the 80s. and to see, of course, and these were unlimited editions, the colors fading, and they were what they were. They were inexpensive posters. But in the same space, there were other things that were taking place. We were moving from film to digital. And at the same time, with digital printing, so that means if I wanted to produce posters in the 90s, at the beginning of digital printing, the digital information would be fed to the new digital machines, and you would be printing them, and all the colors would be better, and the inks would be better, and so on. It really wasn't that simple, and there were a lot of problems, but still, it was a new process that eventually took over from film, and that has almost disappeared completely, like stone lithography has almost disappeared completely. So now you have digital printing. At the same time was the beginning of giclee printing. And this is another process that is even more sophisticated and something that is fascinating to the artist, because if somebody had said to me in the 80s, I can reproduce on canvas one of your paintings on canvas, and I defy you to tell the difference. And I would have laughed, because obviously that was not possible then. But today it is possible. The only way that I can tell the difference is because, to be honest, my energy is in one and it's not in the other. But visually, they are identical. So here is for the first time an opportunity to have a reproduction that has the quality of a level that is the same as the original. That's a good thing and a bad thing. The good thing is, if you say, this piece now, which is an exact replica of the original, there are only 100 of those in the world. The original painting is very expensive. These are much less expensive, but there are only 100. And you think, oh, okay, that's really, really interesting. Of course, the downside is the number of people that have a giclee print, they bought it, passed it on to their children, and the children come to a gallery and say, I have the original, because they're that close. So I normally say, if it's going to be printed like, I have a canvas painting, and I have a canvas giclee, let's say 10, 20, 50, 100, whatever it is, they can't be the same size. Just like with the old Remington sculptures, you want to know the difference between a Remington sculpture that's an original and one that's a later reproduction, the size difference. So that is what I think is very important. But imagine that you can have a replica that is that good that you cannot tell the difference. Interestingly enough, I have some in my house, and people walk around going, oh my God, I've never seen that painting. It's incredible. Well, it is incredible. It's a giclee, but it's still an incredible painting. So I think in the end, we are in a new era of what is possible in terms of printing. And I'm glad that I've been around long enough to see it, because the difference between even 20 years ago and today is absolutely remarkable.